The Quiet Chaos Drive Me Mad, Chapter 11. My head dropped to stare at the table, and I placed my left hand on one of the pieces of silverware. "I told you to stop randomly calling me," Sam said. "And now you're messing up my date." She then hung up the phone and looked to it for a moment before peeking at me while I stared blankly back at her, still holding the fork. "You look a little shocked," she told me. "I am," I said. "Don't think too much about that call. That guy's been calling me ever since I broke it off." "Well, can you break him off altogether?" "Well, yeah, but why would I do that?" I stared at her and then down at the table for less than a nanosecond as though to regain my composure before engaging in another back and forth. The gulp I took while looking down was silence. I was thinking about I was thinking because you're dating someone else," I answered. "That's true, but he's good company too," she told me. I looked in her eyes and saw sincerity, a gesture followed by me smiling. "You know what? I agree with you." I proceeded to stand from my table and walk to the front desk, a female employee being the sole person there. "Yeah," I said, overseeing the footsteps of Sam. "I'd like to pay for my order in advance." I reiterated what I had purchased, and Sam touched me on the shoulder. "Don't do this," she told me. I continued stating my order, the employee ringing up the price, and me handing her the number of dollars needed to compensate for the food. "I'll go check if it's ready," the employee said. "Thank you," I replied, her walking down while Sam and myself remained on the side of the counter. I folded my arms and went over to the wall, me pressing my back against the darkened windows. "Come on," Sam said, tugging at my arm. I pulled my cell phone out, placing it in front of my face. She did it again, I wrote in the text message to Trey. "They always have some alternative to you, and then when you ask them to try being serious, you get denied." I placed my phone back into my pocket. "What did you type?" Sam asked me. Nothing that you should concern yourself with," I answered. "You didn't tell your parents something bad about me, did you?" "Not at all." "Then who was it?" "Look, I'm waiting to get my food and you're annoying me. Please leave me be." She removed her grip on my right arm and backed away by several inches, enough for an adult-sized person to walk between us and not feel as though we were awfully close. I reached in my pocket for my cell phone and it became the vessel for which I sought distraction. I skimmed through headlines on news websites and looked through the message history of Sam and myself and changed the background on my phone all in the span of a minute or so. Anything to take away the thought of this woman hovering over me while trying to convince me I'm special, concurrently with having a back channel to her former suitor. Then it happened. I felt a firm set of lips press against my cheek. Though my eyes initially widened, a look that lasted for roughly a moment, they turned towards Sam's face. She had closed her eyes and placed her left arm on my shoulder, her chest leaning into the latter part of my body. "Was that supposed to do something?" I asked. "I was trying to prove you mattered to me," she said. "So much so that you talked to a former boyfriend while on a date with a guy that you said you wanted to from the first time you encountered him." "He's just one guy. Let me ask you something. Was he the first guy you ever dated?" "No." "Thought so." I turned my body to her. "I wagered that while he was your boyfriend, his direct predecessor in that role was someone who could call you and text you even after the relationship ended," I told her. "And I'd bet he became upset with this, but you told your current boyfriend that he mattered to you and likely kissed him on the cheek in an attempt to show it." "Why do you sound so paranoid?" "Because it goes both ways. Most of the women I've met and liked, whether it was in person or online, didn't matter to me beyond trying to get a date with them, and you say all kind of things when you're trying to reach that goal." The female cashier came to the front desk, holding packages of obscured food. "Your order," she said. "Thank you," I replied. I walked through the front door of the establishment and held the food in one hand while typing the number to my house phone. "Augustus," my father's son, the other end. "The date is off," I told him. To make a long story short, she's playing some kind of game of trying to hold on to old guys and acquire new ones. "Where are you?" "Right outside the restaurant." "Tell me more when you get home. I don't want you standing out there recounting this." "Okay." We hung up and I moved to sit in my car, starting the engine. The windows were rolled up and I heard a knock on the passenger side of the car. Sam was pressing her hand against the window when I looked over. I rolled it down after a moment passed. "What do you want?" I asked. "For you to get this idea out of your head," she said. "Why would I not be upset about you talking to a former boyfriend while you're on a date with me?" "Okay, that's true, but you have this idea that I'm going to use you." "Yeah, a free lunch. But I paid for myself." This time and other times, I'm sure your other men paid for something you wanted at one point or another. That's true. Her head toward, she leaned her head through where the window had been, prior to me rolling it down completely. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't get you anything, she said. Look, I'm tired of talking about this, I replied. Are you going to cut off all ties with these other guys? It's only one guy. Are you going to cut off all ties with that one guy? She stared at me with a saddened look. Thought so, I said, placing my car in reverse and looking through the back window. I suggest you move. She went over to the back of the car and placed her stomach in front of it. I placed my car in park and stood by the driver's seat when I exited the vehicle. Can you go? I shouted. If you stop trying to run away from me, she replied. This is hardly running away. I want to leave a place I have no reason to be. Since the date was canceled and I was only here for that, then there's no reason for me to still be around. Maybe we could just sit out here and talk. No, go away. I sat down in the driver's seat of the vehicle and she knocked on the window of the passenger seat again. I looked over to her and rolled the window down, throwing my hand at the button to start the engine, shifting the vehicle into the reverse function. I looked through the back window and then toward where she had been, Sam standing in the same same place as moments before. The following minutes were mainly me driving back to the house and trying to erase the thought of this whole affair from my mind. The light traffic and relative ease with which I returned home made it near impossible to entirely focus on what lied in front of me. Pulling up into my home's driveway, I noticed Sam's vehicle and its lack of inhabitants. I put my car in reverse and parked near the sidewalk, opening the door on the passenger seat to make sure I was immune to trouble over not being close enough as defined by the rules of driving. I turned the car off next, pushed my seat back with an adjustment, and closed my eyes. The vehicle was relatively cool, the result of the outside having a cold gust of wind consistently streaking through the air for the past several hours. I heard a knock at the window roughly 3 minutes after shutting my eyes, the taps of a loud nature, suggesting whoever was doing it was upset or very eager to speak with me. I opened my eyes to find my father the perpetrator of this noise. What's the story with this woman? My father asked. She's seeing other guys behind my back, most likely. Well, from what she's telling your mother and me, she had some old flame of hers calling her on the date and brushed it off or you got upset. Yes, she didn't think it was a big deal. Now, what did she say that made you this mad? I wasn't mad, just disappointed. Because she spoke to someone she has a history with? No, because that guy was presented by her as being insignificant in spite of that. How am I to believe that the same label won't be assigned to me so she can butter up some other guy? Augustus, my father said, placing his hands through the window and motioning with them. You gotta get out of this thought that something screwed up right from the jump. Till you see her throw her clothes off and press against one of these guys, or know that she's doing it for fact, you have to throw away your suspicions. Did you not hear anything I said? I heard all of it. I also heard what she had to say. And your conclusion of that caused you to turn on me. No, I'm just telling you what I saw when she came here. And that was a woman who showed more interest in you than I've ever seen any other woman do before. I'm not saying she doesn't have interest, but you don't make a person feel as if you have plenty of other options if you want them to think they have a serious chance. Imagine me calling Trey up and telling him how he's my best friend before calling someone else and saying the same thing to them. Do you see how cheaping that makes someone feel? I definitely do. He opened the passenger seat of the car and sat down in it. But think about something, he said. How many times does a woman come to your house and spill her guts out like this? Never, I answered. Well, it's happening today and you don't know. Well, it's happening today and you don't know if it will again. I will take the opportunity while it presents itself. I thought for a moment and stepped out of my car, my father following suit and me locking the door behind us. I walked ahead of him to the front door of our home and discovered that it was unlocked, hearing the sounds of my mother midway through making a point while I stepped into the living room. There I saw my mother sitting on the couch with Sam, who looked at me briefly before returning her eyes to stare at my mother. Glad you could join us, my mother said. What is this, I asked. Some couple counseling. No, really, that's exactly what we're doing. I think Sam has some things she wants to say to you. Sam rose from the side of the couch and walked over to me. I've decided something, she said. I'm not going to talk to any other guys while we date. Really, I asked, halfway believing it. She took my hand. Yeah, I want to prove I think we can make something good here. Will you give it a chance? I looked in her eyes. Sincerity appeared to be in her facial expression and tone of voice, and turning her down in front of my mother would have made the latter compare me to various historical dictators like Ivan the Terrible. Fine, I said, glancing at my mother. Looks like my diplomatic skills have paid off once again, she said. I ought to get nominated Secretary of State. We'd never go to war again. Sam laughed, apparently comprehending that I was being sarcastic. How dare you have such a low opinion of the people skills for which your mother has learned over her several decades of life, my mother said with a smile. She walked past us and went through the front door, me noticing only then that my father had not come back inside. Are you going to let go of my hand, I asked. She nodded her head and released me from her grip. The worst thing you could have done for yourself was coming in here and telling them about our date. Why? The thing with me and my dating life or romances or whatever really bothers me, and I don't need it bothering them. Then don't let it. Pretend none of this happened. We can start over. But wouldn't that erase everything that has been learned today? No way, I'll just stop talking to other guys.